What up, everybody? Welcome to Get Your News On with Ron. We got a special Monday edition. And let's see. Let me try to get the hangout up here so I can see everybody. And we got some breaking news. We are joined by Matthias. And Matthias, how do you say your last name again?
Dedamore.
Dedamore. All right. That's what I thought. I just wasn't sure. And we are also joined by... Other person, jump in, please.
Jesse Abrams.
Jesse Abrams. All right. Sorry I'm not more prepared, but we were running behind today. So that's kind of where we're at. Jesse Abrams, Matthias Dedamore. And so what we're going to do is we're going to really jump in here once we reach about 30 people. That's kind of how we do it here. Usually on today, since today's a Monday, we do some music talk for Monday. We can do that for a little bit, but then I think people are really going to want to be talking about what you guys have to talk about, because we got some big news today, folks, and we got a special episode today. And Matthias and Jesse have a lot to tell us. And the fun part is, I don't even know exactly what they have to tell us. I just know it's something big. I know it's something that's probably going to tick us off. I know it's something that is going to be inspiring, angering, and off-putting, and discouraging and encouraging all at the same time. How does that all add up? We're going to find out real freaking soon. In the meantime, aren't you guys really, really happy that our Supreme Court is worried about important issues like sports gambling? Man, I mean, we just have everything else figured out. We have everything else figured out, so we can just worry about the important things now, like sports betting. I personally am just glad it happened now, because if it would have happened, you know, like 15 years ago or so, there's a couple Hunter S. Thompson books that would not have been as exciting if sports betting wasn't illegal and if he wasn't doing it at his compound. So I personally am glad it happened now, actually. Who cares?
Right.
Who cares?
Right.
Do you guys care? I'll turn it over to you. Do you guys care?
I say let everyone live their life and do what they want as long as it's not harming someone else. So I don't know what the Supreme Court's doing.
With you 110%.
I will say I do have some problems with gambling, but most of those are like casino gambling, where they are really sort of predatory after low-income working families, and they come in and make ridiculous tax break negotiations with the state. But sports gambling, I mean, come on. If you got a few dollars, throw down on a horse. It's fucking Kentucky, or, you know, anything like that.
Well, the thing is, people are going to do it anyway. I mean, that's the thing.
Right.
People are going to do it anyway, and it's just there's a million more important things. But hey, I guess
you don't want to push gambling underground again.
Yeah,
that was a horrible idea.
That creates crime. Yeah.
So, guys, we got 30 logged in here, so we're going to start on what's going on here and why you guys are here. Both you guys worked on the campaign for a guy named Dennis Kucinich. You're both in Ohio, and I saw those results coming in. We actually streamed live shortly as those results were coming in. When I saw the margin between Cordray and Kucinich, I thought to myself, no frickin' way. No frickin' way. Yeah. So, you guys have some information to share. What's going on?
Well, so I was on the campaign from day one. I was the events and scheduling coordinator, and Jesse came on. He actually moved from Texas to be in Ohio to work on Dennis's campaign.
What part of Texas, Jesse?
Dallas.
All right, that's more leavable than, say, Austin, but all right, fair enough.
Yeah, it is.
Dallas is cool, don't get me wrong, but
no, I like Dallas, yeah, but Austin, I think I love Austin.
Yeah, that'd be a tough place to leave. All right, so please continue.
Okay, so yeah, so he moved here to be a field organizer, and so just living life on the ground, we did not see the kind of reaction that the polls seem to show. The the disparity is much larger than we could expect based on the kind of response that we were getting from folks around the state to both Dennis and Tara. Tara Mosley Samples was Dennis's running mate, and when it came down to election day, and Jesse was on the ground a lot more on this than I was, but we saw a lot of fishy things going on in the polls. And then we kind of look back and see a number of things. And there's this sort of aggregate, increasing aggregate pieces of just thumbs on scales and fishy numbers going on in the polls and stuff like that, that it was kind of a slow.
Go into some detail about that first.
Okay. Well, I'd say, actually, I'll let you go about what happened on election day.
Well, first I'll talk about last month. There was a poll that came out from Fallon Research that was showing Corger with like a double lead over Kucinich. Mm-hmm. And I actually tweeted at that organization asking them for the methodology in the poll and everything else. And they told me, we can't give that to you. That's the property of the client. So the client that actually commissioned the poll was a right-wing activist group that literally had in its explanation that it wanted to find where the donors should spend their money. And that's what the poll was about. So I was like, this poll makes no sense. So I did that research. And when they told me they couldn't even give us the methodology, I was like, this poll's pretty much fake.
Well, that's the thing. Either the poll itself is completely bogus, the questions are leading, and it's just like really inconclusive, not useful data, or the poll tells you something totally different, and you see somebody in the media, whatever the outlet may be, cherry pick certain statistics from that poll and use it to reach this bogus conclusion that the poll didn't even really indicate. You always see one of those two things happen. Recently on this show, we talked about a poll that said Biden's the 2020 front runner. And we looked into the poll and it's like, well, they only screen people in one state. They only screen so many people that identify as Democrats. And out of those people, a couple of them were like, it was just, they totally just pulled out this random part of the poll and said, oh, this is what the poll meant. And that was what it was. It wasn't about who's your favorite contender for 2020 even. So it was just a totally ridiculous conclusion from a poll that they just cherry picked. So you usually see one of those two things going on. Either the data itself completely sucks, or the data is fine, but they try to leap to this conclusion that's not there.
Yeah. Well, and, the polls were weird. We had one poll where we had climbed up, we tied, and then we had the poll that Jesse just spoke about where we dropped 9, 10, 12 points. It was crazy in the span of a month. And that just didn't seem to us plausible. But there was a number of other things besides just the number play that we noticed on election day. But the release of the way they did the Assad attack on Dennis, and finding the group that was it was a peace organization that paid him a $20,000 speaking fee to go to London. And he gave a talk on peace. They were a pro-Syria group, but I guess there were a few pro-Assad members in there, and they exploited that, and they did it very strategically. It was very well placed, because that was sort of like their smoking gun. Dennis has taken $20,000 that he didn't report, and it's from and they can start beefing up a sort of terrorist narrative, which is ridiculous for. That he knows any platform he's ever spoken. It's always about peace without military intervention to the best of our ability. But they released that shortly after early voting had begun. And so what that does is it scares people, because it did a lot for the Democratic base voters. That was a hard hit. And then they went out and cast their votes. Well, once you cast your vote, you don't have time to get the information out there to correct the record. Yeah, I feel that in certain in a certain way, that was one area that we could have been a little more aggressive and handled better. But that one was a really big voter hit for us because, like I said, this came from a number of different directions. It wasn't just, you know, they went in and rigged the polls and there's a smoking gun and we can point fingers at a particular person. It was a lot more like, you know, how 2016 worked for Bernie Sanders, where these were the small little incremental bits of rigging where you can't really point as a particular finger. And if you can't point like a very specific finger, it's much harder to fight legally or anything like that.
So wait, let me ask you this. Is there actual foul play going on at the polls themselves? Was there actual, like, votes were mismanaged, something similar to what Tim Canova went through? Are you seeing any of that? Or is this just a matter of Cordray's smear campaign, which was a smear campaign and was terrible propaganda, but I guess it was effective. Like, is that just the conclusion here?
Well, we can make some pretty like certain speculation that ODP had a direct hand in how a lot of this worked, even though while they played the front of being, you know, that they weren't getting into it. But you could see where certain monies were being funneled. And the county parties, a lot of the county parties, especially the rural parties, where they got them to endorse Cordray. And once they endorse Cordray, then all of these voters are getting a slate. So you have all these other counties going in with, you know, checkmark slates and vote for Cordray and that. So there was definitely some thumbs on scales, but okay. I think their broadest methodology though was the smear campaign.
Okay, so like, but as of right now, just to be totally transparent and fair here, there's no evidence of actual cheating or rigging other than just your typical the establishment smearing the progressive and not totally being neutral in a primary process the way they're supposed to be.
Well, I'll let Josie speak mostly to that because he's actually looked into this a lot, but there is some at least anecdotal evidence that there was some direct rigging of the actual election on the ground when it happened.
Okay, yeah, so like in what way?
I can go over some of them.
Okay.
So some things that I personally saw or witnessed was that obviously they do debate rigging. There's that as well. I was at the Cleveland Heights debate on Saturday, April 21st. And the person who was moderating actually tried to take over the event and be blatantly pro-Cordray. But they weren't allowed to do that because there was another function of the Democratic Party that was more progressive there too. But she let him end almost every time, and she let him give the final closing statement. Because the whole debate, he was basically saying, me too, I agree with everything Dennis said, but I'm the only one who can be elected. So she was helping facilitate that so he could respond. But a couple other things. They were refusing to give Democratic voters a Democratic primary ballot at like polling locations. So when they made it obvious they wanted to vote for Dennis and they wanted a Democratic ballot, they would be given a regular nonpartisan ballot that just has the issues on it. And when they said, that's not what I want to vote for Dennis or I want to vote for in the Democratic primary, they still wouldn't get a Democratic primary ballot. They would be given the nonpartisan ballot instead. That's one thing that I saw personally. Another thing was the results were pretty uniform across the state, almost as if they weren't legitimate. It was kind of weird because we saw all across the state, the percentages were nearly the same, except for in Cleveland, obviously, where Dennis Kucinich was a congressman for a while. So those numbers were a little higher, but the rest of them seemed almost like you plug a number into an equation and this is the number it gives you. And it's pretty much, I found that to be bizarre. But a couple other instances that I didn't see, but other close members of our team saw, there was a guy at the gunning precinct, that's where I stood all day, that was giving us information. But one of our members was asking for information on the results. And he gave her some crazy sheet. And when she was like, this is not what I asked for at all, it doesn't show me the information, he's like, okay, we'll get you the right sheet. He goes into the back room with the other workers there. They quickly pack up and rush to leave. And then when she tries to stop them and says, you didn't give me anything that I asked for, he's like, oh, we already packed up and we're leaving. So she couldn't get the results from that precinct because he's just like, no, we're out.
So this was a member of your campaign asking for specific results, and that was denied to her.
Right.
Yes.
In Ohio, they post base numbers of who's voted. Actually, they print all the names of who's voted. It's so that campaigns can target like last minute phone calls, and they do it 3 times. So she was trying to get the final tape on that, and yeah, they shut her down and then said we're closed. Actually, the day before our last day of early voting, I don't know how many precincts, if it wasn't all of them, because in early voting you go to your board of elections. They did a hard close at 2:00. Like they literally closed the doors and they didn't close the line and let everybody in line. So they were turning numbers of, we don't know how many, but there were a number of people that were turned away at the last day of early voting.
Dozens at just one board of elections where 2 of our people were at.
Mm-hmm. So this is just, what's interesting here is that we see this on the micro level within the Democratic Party, as a whole in the nation. When voter turnout is lowest, that's when Republicans do better. So here you have it on a more micro level within the party. When voter turnout is lowest, the corporate Democrat does better, because it seems like this is typical voter suppression tactics. They're trying to prohibit people from coming to the polls, probably because they were worried about your guys' ground game. Is that a fair assessment?
Oh, no, that's exactly it. I mean, if you think about it, like I said earlier, I think the Assad really hit Dennis hard, but we only had 22% of the vote show up. And the Republicans kicked our ass by about well over 100,000 votes. So that to me is really, really scary. Now, we've seen a couple polls now that Cordray is unfortunately the nominee that has him up, but most everywhere has Mike DeWine kicking his ass. So it looks like it's going to be Republicans Ohio for at least another 4 years. But
no, yeah, there's no way Cordray is going to beat the Republican. I'd be shocked. Yeah, I'd be shocked if he beat the Republican.
But I think the Democrats definitely did not want a large base to turn out, and so I think more than anything, it was the Assad bit that kind of and they ended up giving up and not going. But because to be beat the way we were, it was like what,
23 or something to like 64 or something like that.
Yeah,
around 40 points. I mean, when I was on the ground in Cleveland with a lot of my colleagues, we almost never heard anyone say the name Cordray. Almost everybody we talked to was either "Don't talk to us, we don't care," or "Dennis Kucinich is our favorite. I met him here. I knew him before you were born." All these other different things that the voters would tell us. And there was a lot of excitement on the ground for Kucinich. So,
well, and that was just in Cleveland, because we had this going on across the state. And so, yeah, it's disappointing, but I think at the same time, of course, this is all speculation on to what extent ODP, the Ohio Democratic Party, did or didn't put their finger on the scale, is that they wanted a lower turnout so that they could manufacture a 40% defeat, so that optically it looks like that our so-called movement was crushed, so that they could sweep the progressives off the table and move heavily forward with their corporate agenda. If it had been a closer margin, then we would have had, optically a much more, it would have looked like a bigger thing that we had done. I still think that we've got that movement there, and none of us are giving up on it, but it would have been nice to have Dennis at the helm.
So let me ask you, the takeaway from all this, all the examples you guys have given of the Democratic establishment working against Dennis Kucinich, essentially getting what they wanted through a variety of methods, some which, well, are shady, are not necessarily completely unheard of in the political process. Right. Others that are you know, pretty much should be outlawed, shouldn't be allowed. They should have to be transparent in providing results. They should have to be transparent in answering questions. They should, you know, they shouldn't do the things they do as far as closing the polls and all that. So is the lesson here, it's time to abandon the Democratic Party? Because what if you guys were spending all of your energy on an independent ticket in the general? Or what if you were spending all of your energy with the Greens or with a viable third party? And somebody at Kucinich's level, I mean, he could join Movement for a People's Party tomorrow, and it would really shake some stuff up. So, and I know you can't speak for him. You guys are speaking for yourselves, but you have experience working the ground game for Dennis Kucinich. Not only a progressive who was stifled by the party this time around, but a progressive who has been stifled by the party his entire career. A man who had his arm twisted by Barack Obama, did what he essentially had to do. And how was he rewarded? Obama redistricted him. Is the lesson here, it's time to abandon the Democratic Party?
I'll say this. I'm going to still try to fight within the Democratic Party to change it to some degree, but I'm probably going to spend even more time out with the grassroots on the outside trying to change the Democratic Party. And the more that I am on the ground seeing all this, the more that I actually think Jimmy Dore is right. The Democratic Party is hopeless. It feels that way. It really does.
Well,
yeah,
and, you know,
Jimmy's not the only person that feels that way. A lot of other people do too, myself being one of them. So how is, and I'm not saying you're wrong, but how is changing from within possible at this point?
I don't think it is.
I think it's so.
All right, so now you guys are going to have to arm wrestle, and that's how we'll settle this. So,
I'm pretty close with Dennis, so I can tell you pretty certainly, without a shadow of a doubt, he will not run, at least for governor, and certainly not for president. Now, we did get a gerrymandering legislation passed, so if the districts become fairer, and maybe we'd see Congressman Kucinich. I don't know, but I can tell you from knowing him personally, he's certainly not done being an activist and an advocate, which he has always excelled at. Always puts boots on the ground, gets marches with laborers, goes to DAPL, gets community hospitals that have been threatened by private interest to be closed, remaining open. But yeah, and see, I kind of lean. I want to get out of the Democratic Party. I really, really, really do. But I think.
Well, what's stopping you, man? I mean,
because it's so much more difficult to get a foothold in. Right now, I'm eyeballing a run for state senate in 2020. It'll be a good run for me. It is in a conservative area, but I have time to work, and I'll be going up against an open seat because the current senator will be up against a term limit because we have term limits. Do the Democratic Party. What I would have to do is go from getting 50 valid signatures to get on the ballot, the Democratic's primary ballot, to getting 1,500 signatures. That's the difference in how Ohio impedes the independence in this state. So it's a game of politics, and I know it's changing the party from the inside is a very it's harder. It's a harder and harder sell the further and further we get out. But I'm still a Saul Alinsky disciple, and I really do believe that that's at least one of our best options. I don't see an outside, at least at this moment. We've got so many huge things. Now, if we could get money out of politics out of the way, if we could get Citizens United dumped, and if we could go even further and get like campaign finance reform so that all elected officials get public funding to do it, and there's caps on donations and spending, then we have an opportunity to break down the party and maybe get towards coalition-style government. Well, you know, and the real pipe dream would be to get rid of the Electoral College and go to ranked choice and fuck primaries altogether.
Absolutely. Well, so here, let me respond to that because, you know, Matthias, I love you. I'd vote for you no matter what. I don't care what you have next to your name. You would get my vote no matter what. But I like Alinsky too. I love Alinsky. But the way I would digest all that is we need people in the inside, not necessarily to kind of use the party to push policy, because they got a lot set up to make sure that doesn't happen. We need people on the inside to do what Bernie Sanders is doing, to expose the beast for what it is. Because and a lot of people are trying to, and I don't know what Bernie's long game is, because there are many days where I wake up and I'm like, why doesn't he just break off with the party? Why doesn't he split with the party? And my theory, and I could be wrong, but my theory is that he's not done exposing the belly of the beast. And, you know, and I'm guilty of this myself. Sometimes I'm guilty of kind of staying within my bubble here in Southern California among a lot of progressives and thinking, hey, we know the Democratic Party's done. We know what it's all about. We know they're a right-wing party. We know they have no interest in changing. We know that. Why is Bernie sticking around? I think because not everybody knows that yet. So when he continues to propose legislation for single-payer health care, for living wages, and you see the party continue to either give it lip service and not follow through at all, I think that those numbers are increasing, and we still need more people. So, and I don't know, maybe that's what's going on, maybe that's not. But either way, if he stays in the party, that's going to happen, whether that's his intention or not.
Yeah.
So I think that as far as like a Saul Alinsky principle goes, having people on the inside, quote unquote, that's what we need. We need people on the inside to almost kind of be, they're the people that are going to throw up the information for us to take and run with. They're going to see that, oh, this is what's going on. This is what this establishment is. That's what we have to benefit from, having people on the inside. As far as good progressives that aren't on the inside now, that aren't already on the inside, I think the best route is a different approach, not the Democrats. I mean, you have the DCCC working against you. You have the DNC working against you. You got superdelegates working against you. You got our process in general working against you. What's better, to go into a burning house and say, at least we have a structure, or to just build a new structure?
I get less and less convinced about the Democratic Party, but I do agree. I think that having insiders is important, because we do need to keep continuously like pointing to this corporate corruption, because that's really what's screwing us all at the end of the day. Mm-hmm. And being able to be on the inside and report that, I think, is important. But yeah, I would love to see stronger coalition movements. The only problem is right now, I haven't seen it organized enough to really hold. The Green Party is certainly not. They show up once every 4 years and think people should pay attention to them, but they have absolutely no way. You know, they're not very good at organizing. And so to the extent that we somehow create a third party, and whatever charismatic leader that we put in front of that, or no charismatic leader, although I'm lean towards that we need a leader, because that's what was wrong with Occupy, right? If we could reignite Occupy, but give it some form of structure that actually can put together a ground game and have an agenda and do something with it, then we might have an opportunity to make some real headwinds. Because I see, you know, especially after Parkland, we're seeing the kids that are going to be voting in the next election cycle becoming organizers. And I think it's amazing. So I think there's a lot of more progressive electorate accumulating. And now, of course, you know, the Y generation is bigger in population than the boomers. So we have opportunities, but whatever happens with going a third party option, which has always been my hesitation, is how do we get an infrastructure to work and make sure that we're not, progressives have the tendency to either coalesce around issues and never know how to work together, or never actually even see the connections between their issues. And they want, God love them, so much to create this sort of anarchic community structure that nothing ever gets done. And so there needs to be some kind of, I don't know. If I could see a real third party actually build an organization that could work, I could see it. I think it needs to start building now, because this is something that could take a generation to put a viable third party together. So I think we need to kind of work from both ends. That's been kind of my opinion for a while.
I understand. I mean, I totally understand. And you know, I'm with you as far as like, we need to start now. I mean, I was at the Draft Bernie conference. I was bummed out when he didn't accept the invitation. I was very, very bummed out. Because, you know, having a figurehead like him leading a new movement, that would have been a very big force to be reckoned with. And who knows what we'd be working on now had he done that. So, but I mean, yeah, it didn't happen. So we got to move forward accordingly. Let's see. Oh, Jimmy Dorshow wants to know. So, guys, we'll get to articles. You guys are welcome to hang out and jump in. The Jimmy Dorshow wants to know, can you tell us how much you've learned working with the great Jimmy Moore? And for anybody that doesn't know what that refers to, I think Norm Macdonald referred to Jimmy as Jimmy Moore on Twitter recently, because Graham Elwood told a story about Last Comic Standing where Norm Macdonald was kind of a douche to him. Norm Macdonald tweeted about it and apologized to Graham, which was cool. Graham got an apology. And he referred to it as the Jimmy Moore. He saw it on the Jimmy Moore show. And Jimmy, he mentioned that he missed you. So so he mentioned that he missed you, and maybe he's been trying to reach you for a long time, and he's been Googling Jimmy Moore and nothing comes up and he's confused. but I've learned a ton, and I continue learning every day. I learned a ton and I continue learning it every day. And yeah, looking forward to your recovery, man. Hope you're getting some good rest. Hope you're relaxing some. And yeah,
we're taking the month off and do some traveling.
Oh, I was talking to Jimmy, but yeah, that goes for you guys too.
Because
Jimmy's recovering as well. But yes, let's put that over to you guys. What are you guys?
Oh yeah, I hope Jimmy recovers well, and we need him back on the forefront, because Jimmy's one of the best voices we have in the country. I wouldn't be a patron if I didn't mean that. I think his show does wonders. I've been watching it for years. You as well, and so many others.
All right, well, let's go to some articles here. Some people are tweeting stuff in. So the way this works, guys, and of course, if anyone has any questions for you guys, I will relay them. But people tweet us articles, and that's how we build this show. Nice. So people are tweeting some articles. We also got some stuff over in our Reddit subsection. So let's find out what we're going to talk about today. And you guys can go ahead and jump in whenever you want to. And that's how we'll roll. So this is from Joe. I'll give it a Get Your News On With Ron retweet. This is also Get Your Timeline On With Ron really slowly. Dem blast Pelosi for trivializing impeachment. This is from The Hill. All right, let's see what this is all about. The Democrat leading the impeachment charge against President Trump on Monday went after House Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi for trivializing the effort. I'll go ahead and I'll redo that first paragraph for us, guys. The Democrat who is really looking for their 15 minutes in the spotlight, so they're leading this pointless tirade about impeachment against President Donald Trump, which would then give us President Pence. So it's absolutely pointless in every way, shape, and form. Went after House Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi because, once again, they're desperately looking for their 15 minutes of fame. and figured this is a good way to get it. More bickering within our dead party. Pelosi and Democratic leaders have sought to tap down the small impeachment push within their ranks, arguing the president hasn't done anything to merit such a weighty response. Really? 23 hours of Russia, Russia, Russia on MSNBC. You'd think that might not be the case, but here we have the Democratic establishment admitting, oh, we don't have any impeachable offenses here. They're admitting it. Can we move on now? The establishment's admitting it. Nancy Pelosi's admitting it. Can we move on now? All right. So Pelosi, a frequent critic of the president, at least whenever the cameras are on, said last week that, quote, being a jerk doesn't rise to the level of seeking his ouster. She's a poet, that Pelosi. She's a poet. But Al Green over in Texas, a member of the Congressional Black Caucus who introduced articles of impeachment last year accusing the president of inciting racial divisions, suggested it's his patriotic duty to stand up to the president despite the leadership's wishes. It is regrettable that Leader Pelosi would trivialize President Trump's hateful discrimination against Jews, blacks, Latinos, women, and the LGBT community by reducing the president's harmful bigotry to his being a jerk, Green said Monday in a brief statement. Love for my country will not permit me to allow the president's bigotry to be trivialized and minimized. So why don't you take that bigotry and apply it to policy? Why don't you point out how ridiculous the wall is? What a waste of resources that would be. The fact that it is bathed in racism and the fact that most of the country doesn't want it. And that he's going to totally screw this thing up. Why don't you point to all the policies he has that have racism attached to them and are wasting money and are wasting resources and is getting nothing policy-wise done? Why aren't you doing that instead of seeking out this 15 minutes of fame by harping about impeachment, which isn't going to happen? You know, when they had, and you know what, we can bring this back to your boy Dennis Kucinich. When Dennis Kucinich went on the line calling for impeachment against President Bush, he actually had a point. Why? Because President Bush committed war crimes. Yes. President Bush committed impeachable offenses. And even though Dennis Kucinich knew that nobody with power was going to listen to him, he knew that, he did it anyway because at least he was exposing some war crimes and at least some people were going to be turned on to how terrible the Iraq war was and how we had no business being there. That's why he did it. And that actually had a purpose. And the Constitution had his back. With Donald Trump, yeah, Donald Trump is despicable. Donald Trump is repulsive. We all know that. Let's focus on what got us to this point.
Well, exactly. And that's the thing about this, you know, the whole resistance movement, I think, has a lot of bullshit going along with it anyway, which is why I've always framed the number of talks as there's room for the revolution and the resistance. But
they are the lead resistance, sir.
Exactly. But this idea, it's like they didn't learn anything. What was Hillary Clinton's strategy? I'm not Trump. Mm-hmm. What is this? You know, it's like Trump is bad. This Trump is awful merit narrative, and now they think that that's going to be what drives the so-called blue wave. Are you kidding me? People still want to hear about issues that they are dealing with on a day-to-day basis: healthcare, jobs, you know, with a living wage, and what are their children going to get properly educated, and you know, the root meat and potato issues that are this country is facing. And we're talking about Russia. They're talking about Russia.
The only thing the Democratic Party # resists is Russia and progressives.
Yeah, well, and I love how the whole methodology for so-called resistance is attacking Trump and getting Trump out of the way. And like you mentioned, I'm like, you know, and I even talked about this because God love Dennis when he was bringing up impeachment about Bush. I was like, Cheney's on the other end of that of that process.
Sure.
And I'm sure that Dennis knew it wasn't going to go through, and he used it more as a soapbox moment to shine the light on what the administration was doing.
Well, it was more a way to get us out of war. It was more a way to get us out of war. That's why that actually had a purpose. In this case, this person is looking for 15 minutes in the spotlight. It serves no positive purpose, especially since Bush was a useful idiot. Cheney would have been a more divisive, useful idiot.
Right.
So Cheney would have been worse than Bush, yes. But Bush did not have the incompetence level as far as being a leader that a Trump has, because Trump reports to nobody. That's the big difference. Trump is just kind of a rogue, whatever. That's why the intelligence agencies don't like him. So Pence, on the other hand, he is your kind of like useful idiot puppet. He could actually get some stuff done.
I agree. And, you know, as a member of the LGBT community, who he is particularly ferocious in pointing his malice towards, Pence frightens me. I certainly don't want to see a Pence president. But, you know, at this point in the game, we are becoming, or I say we, but the Democratic Party is proving itself more and more to be a dead brokerage. And, you know, when people keep seeing them harp on Russia and not come back to the issues in the way that they need to be addressed, they're looking at the Democratic Party and they're useless. So why get behind this party that's not for our issues? They're just babbling around about Russia. Meanwhile, we've got Trump's ratings on the rise because he's taking credit for North Korea, which he had nothing to do with, because, you know, he did get a tax plan that promises to lower people's taxes, even though, you know, they're really being duped by what's going to actually happen in the long term. So that's what also is kind of regrettable and frightening to me, is that
you're cutting out.
You know, what happens when he has a net favorability rating? How's resistance working for you then?
Oh, absolutely. And you know what, Matthias, I will, just to be fair here, to close out the segment, I think you overspoke a little bit when you said that just kind of saying we're not the other guy is completely useless. To be fair to the Democrats, we're not the other guy. If you just run on we're not the other guy, you can manage to beat a pedophile by less than 2 percentage points. Let's not forget that.
Amen.
And Joe, end the segment on my joke.
and then he can go off and vote for economic policy that's actually hurts Black people, even though those are the folks who got him into office.
All right, so let's move on to another one here. This one's from D.C. I just gave it a Get Your News On with Ron retweet. U.S. Representative Errol Blumenauer says cannabis may be deregulated nationwide within 4 years. All right, so U.S. Representative Errol Blumenauer, whose name I'm sure I'm butchering, but I'm seeing this for the first time, y'all. Get Your News On with Ron style. Believes the end of the battle to legalize marijuana across the United States is fewer than 4 years away. I made a bet that within 5 years, every state will be able to treat cannabis like alcohol, and there will be universal access to medical marijuana. If we do our job, it's game over in 2 years. So this guy's been a longtime champion of legal weed. He said the 2018 elections could be pivotal to removing cannabis from the federal list of Schedule I narcotics like heroin and methamphetamine. Why is it on Schedule I in the first place? Because of a goofy propaganda movie called Reefer Madness that we all know is a laughingstock. They show that movie nationwide so people can laugh at it because it's so over the top and ridiculous. And you can laugh until you go to the DEA's website and realize that it still did its job because pot is listed as a Schedule I drug for no reason. No reason. Schedule I means it's just as bad for you as heroin. It has no redeemable qualities. Even people that are against legalization know that's not true. Not even close to being true, but it's still there.
Meth Schedule II, I think.
Right. Yeah, I believe that's
the case, and the thing about that is, of course, you know, that the Reefer Madness thing was there, and that was about Mexicans, and let's throw something to be racist about Mexicans with. But it was actually the lumber industry that backed the lobbying for that because of the versatility of hemp. They wanted to get hemp because you can do hemp paper. I mean, parchment used to be made out of hemp. The lumber industry wanted to be able to occupy the paper market. And so they were the first lobbyists. Then, of course, now we've got the pharmaceuticals. But, you know, what a lot of folks don't realize about cannabis is that we literally have cannabis receptors in our brains. It is literally a plant that has been with us evolutionarily for, you know, tens of thousands of years. And for like 150, we've been acting like fools. Absurd to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I mean, I hope he's right here. I mean, I know you guys are in Ohio now. Ohio, do you guys have it medical yet, or are you guys still just totally?
We would love to have it. It's legal. We just need the General Assembly to actually get the motivation to write the policy and procedure for it. That's where we're at. They haven't actually drafted how it's going to be instituted in the revised code. And they're taking their time because there are a bunch of Republicans that didn't really want it to be legal to begin with.
Well, so let's just end on a question then. Do you think, and then we'll move on to another article. Do you think this guy's right? Do you think we're about 4 years away from total federal? It is legal.
I think he's close to right. I think he'll be right about most states, but I don't know. Sometimes the DEA moves really slow, and it might take a little longer to deschedule it, or maybe they'll surprise us and deschedule it next year or something. I mean, you never really know. My only thing about that, I think definitely the trend of the country is to move that way, at least for medical, even though there's reasons. Yeah. Anyway, but as long as Jeff Sessions is Attorney General, that is going to be a pretty big impediment. I'll say something
That's a good point. That's a good point.
I think we should Donald Trump should listen to Richard Nixon fanboy Roger Stone and legalize marijuana in all 50 states and deschedule it. I'll never say that again, but on this one issue, Roger Stone should be listened to.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, and that's the thing. You have people on the right, and, you know, a lot of times it's for the wrong reasons. Like, you know, John Boehner, he's just for legal pot now because he's making money. But I mean, you have people on the right finally coming around to it. And then you have people in the Democratic establishment that haven't come around to it. So you do have this weird mixed bag. But overall, public opinion is so just over it. So I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, yeah, you do have a couple kind of interesting roadblocks here, like a Jeff Sessions, which I think that's one that is one thing where if we don't get it, that'll be why. But I think this guy's going to be right. I mean, I think public opinion's going to override here, just because so many people are over it. It would be a good political card to play. It would make you look good, especially for a Trump. If Trump wants to be around for 8 years, that'd be a really good way to, you know, kind of make himself look good, make himself look like an everyman, so to speak. So I have a feeling this guy's right. We're about 4 years away.
I think Jesse had a really good idea, though. If we get him in front of Roger Stone, and all we have to do is put him on Fox and Friends, I mean, those people can get him turned on and off his bedroom light. Then we can get Trump behind.
Yeah, Roger Stone has Trump's ear. That's why I think Trump should listen to Roger Stone on that issue.
And Fox and Friends is where he gets his, you know, daily briefing.
That's very true. All right, let's move on to another one here. So this is from Hector, and I'm not sure what this is about based on the headline. So guys, we're really in for we're really jumping in head first here. This is an opinion piece from Disobedient Media, which, you know, I like Disobedient Media. Shout out to all them. Shout out to Elizabeth Voss. This is actually her article. And here's the opinion piece. For truth tellers like Shakya Latifah, there is no justice. And there is no right pronunciation either if Ron is covering it. I'm sure I butchered that name again. Shikya Latifah. I think Latifah I did fine. Shikya, I'm sure that's wrong. But again, seeing it for the first time, that is the crutch I use. Latika Al-Maktoum, I feel like people do this just to mess with me. Hope the public would never have to see the 40-minute video she created before her attempted escape from Dubai, which was only to be published in the event of the disaster. In the 40-minute clip, she repeatedly tells the camera, "This might be the last video I ever make." Wow. Okay, this is heavy. Latifah is the daughter of Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum. God damn it. The ruler of Dubai. As she explains in her recording, she previously attempted to flee Dubai in her teens, but was caught at the border. leading to 3 years of continual torture on the personal orders of her father. As she explains, Latifah is not the only family member who has suffered at the hands of Sheikh Mohammed. Her sister Shamsa, she said, attempted escape in the UK in 2001 at the age of 19, but was kidnapped off the street by henchmen. On her return to Dubai, Latifah recalls that Shamsa was also imprisoned, tortured, and eventually monitored 24/7 by medical personnel. Her tell-all video was given to her legal representatives from the UAE Civil and Criminal Justice Specialist and detained in Dubai if she were to be killed or go missing. The recording was duly published after Detained in Dubai's founder, Radha Sterling, received a phone call from Latifah begging for help. Wow. Okay. RT's report on the abduction related to the testimony, who stated that at least 5 warships, 2 military planes, and a helicopter were deployed in the raid. Since news of her disappearance emerged, people have been calling for her safety. Wow. This is a heavy piece. I personally am not totally fluent in this conflict to have a lot to say about it. But I guess looking at it from a thematic standpoint, it's good that having access to online video is allowing people to get these stories out on a worldwide scale easier than they could if we didn't have it. However, we're not always able, that those stories and that content still becomes suppressed via a variety of mediums. And when we have greater oversight, I mean, the intelligence agencies are paying more attention to online content than they ever have before right now. And this is largely having to do with Russiagate, by the way. When you have that going on, there's more online suppression maybe than ever before. And that is obviously that's not a good thing. What are your guys' thoughts?
I basically agree with you. I don't have enough information to really say much other than that's a horrible story. Yeah. And I hope she gets to safety.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And this is that's part of the fun of Get Your News On with Ron. We never know what we're gonna get. So we got time for one more. You guys cool to hang out for one more? We're gonna close on this today. All right. So this is over on the Reddit, our Reddit subsection, and this is from Just Want World Peace, which I agree. I'm all about world peace as well. I'm gonna go ahead and tweet this article, so anybody that wants to follow along can follow along. Oh, and by the way, guys, you'll notice it's a little darker today. My battery lights went out on my lights as soon as the stream started, so that's what's going on here. It's we usually don't do a stream on Monday. This is a special day, and I'll do some housekeeping here in a bit as soon as we do this real quick article. This is from Quartz, and being a mom in the U.S. is dangerous and wildly expensive. Like dozens of other countries in the world, the U.S. is celebrating Mother's Day this coming Sunday, which, by the way, Mother's Day has a lot of roots in anti-war activism. Don't forget, yesterday I tweeted out, call your mom, and don't forget to remember that war sucks, and it always will. And that's what I did. I called my mom, and I was like, hey, Mom, war sucks and always will. And she was like, yeah, that's nice. Can we talk about, like, stuff? Like, how was your tour? And, and then we talked about it, and I got her a really cool gift. I got my parents a joint Mother's Day and Father's Day gift where they get to go to this botanical garden thing where there's like music and a bunch of new agey stuff. And, my parents are kind of suckers for that sort of thing. They're in their 60s now. I thought they would dig it. I wanted to turn them on to a new folk artist they hadn't heard of before, but honestly, nothing cool was coming to town, at least nothing that I found in Pittsburgh where they live. So I was like, they'll dig this. And I got them that instead. They get to watch flowers grow while listening to music. Maybe they'll find a subgenre of yoga that they will get into. That was my gift. But anyway, this is really dangerous and expensive. More new mothers die in the U.S. than in any other rich country several times over. Why is that? Because of our horrific healthcare system. Giving birth in the U.S. is insanely expensive. Why is that? Because of our horrific healthcare system. America remains one of exactly 2 countries that don't mandate maternity leave. Why is that? Because of our horrific work culture. The cost of childcare in America is astounding. This penalizes mothers most because of our horrific healthcare system and because of our horrific work culture. The U.S. detains more mothers than ever. It also has women literally deliver in chains. Why is that? Because of our horrific for-profit prison system. Well, there you go. Because of our broken policies that favor the 1% and nobody else, being a mom in the U.S. is really, really freaking hard. And guess what? If we stop populating the planet, we're in a whole lot of trouble. And I don't know about you guys. I don't have any kids. And I don't know if I'll ever be able to. When I look at the world around me, I don't know if I'll ever be able to. Because honestly, especially with, our horrific weapons culture, I'd be scared shitless when they went away to school each day.
Yeah. Well, I adopted some kids, and actually, I think that's kind of important right now.
How old are they?
Twin boys. They're 12.
Oh no shit, man.
Yeah, got them when we were 7. They live in Tennessee with my ex, but yeah, and I think that's important because it always the anti-abortion folks that are like, if you get pregnant, you should have the baby to term, and then like adoption if you don't really want it. Okay, that would be lovely, but we have like a foster parent crisis right now. There are like states are clamoring to find qualified foster parents to take half the kids that they have in the system. And then that doesn't even account for how the system's often broken and taking kids away from their parents, and in problematic ways. But I lost my train of thought. You're right. It's difficult to be a mother in this country, and we make it that way because of economic disadvantage. Women don't make their pay dollar is less valuable than men's. And God knows why that's still a thing in 2018, based on at least the advances we have had, and of course we seem to be going backward in a lot of them.
Well, but Matthias, look on the bright side. You can bet on sports games now. Let's not forget that the Supreme Court has their priorities. Boom, you guys. Boom, you guys. Brought it full circle. Might be streaming in the dark, but brought it full circle. Guys, thanks for joining. Thank you for the information on the campaign. I'll do a little bit of housekeeping, then we got to go here. So, guys, this is We Get Your News On with Ron. We did a Monday episode today because we're not doing a Tuesday episode. We usually do Tuesday through Friday at 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. We're not doing Tuesday. Why? Because I'm going to be covering on aggressive progressives. Jimmy, who was nice enough to stop by the chat today and say hello. Jimmy is still recovering. He's still resting up. So myself and Steve-O, Steve-O's a regular, but myself will be subbing in for him on Aggressive Progressives tomorrow. So I won't be doing it. Get Your News On with Ron, but please tune in to Aggressive Progressives. I'm real excited about it. We're going to have a fun time. And then I'll be back, of course, on Wednesday at 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. Little bit of tour updates. Graham Elwood and I, as you saw Jimmy ask about, Graham Elwood and I had a good old time on tour. We hit Tempe, Arizona, Lake Havasu, Arizona. We hit Las Vegas, Nevada, and we hit San Diego, California. And I don't know why I'm drawing a blank. It's because I'm thinking about how I want to plug the next shows. We already announced the second leg of the tour. June 20th, we're going to be in Nashville, Tennessee. June 21st, we're going to be at Stand Up Live in Huntsville, Alabama. June 22nd, we're going to be at the Block Off Biltmore in Asheville, North Carolina. June 23rd, we're going to be at Four Kegs in Louisville, Kentucky. June 24th, we're going to be in Atlanta, Georgia at the Punchline. Go to ronplacone.com for all those tickets. Visit the Progressive Comedy Tour on Facebook. We have announced the second leg of the tour. We're doing a quick run in June in the Southeast. Hope to see you then. Follow me on Twitter at Ron Placone. We do this every Tuesday through Friday, unless otherwise noted. We'll be back Wednesday because it won't be around Tuesday. You guys know the drill. Patreon.com. Pay what you can level. Do it if you're able. And Matthias and Jesse, thank you guys so much for joining me today. And best of luck in whatever's next for you guys.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks, Ron.